A very good evening to everyone. Welcome to one more episode of the Practice Management webinar series from the Maharashtra Ophthalmological Society. Today, our topic is scaling up your practice. Over the last 10 months, we from the MOS have brought to you all a series of webinars relating to practice management, including financial practice, including HR management, and how to start your practice. Who doesn't want growth? How to grow, when to grow, what is the right way to grow is what we are going to discuss today. And we have a galaxy of panelists here who are going to take us through this journey. Welcome to one and all here. Welcome to each one of the panelists. And thank you for sparing your valuable time, especially when so many other things are happening at the same time. I would like to now call upon Dr. Santosh Bhide, who is the president of Maharashtra Ophthalmological Society, to say a few words. And also would like to thank Dr. Sonal Kalia ma'am, who is the president of YOSI, for associating with us in this webinar. Over to you, Dr. Santosh.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Anaga. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, friends. Welcome to the 8th episode of our practice management by Maharashtra Ophthalmological Society in association with YOSI. And as Dr. Anaga has already told us that this webinar is for the knowing us about the how to grow our practice, when to grow, how to grow, what are the challenges, what to look for, if at all there are any challenges, how to overcome the challenges. And we are lucky to have the speakers and the panelists. It's a great blend of experience as well as young and dynamic panelists are there. So I'm sure each one of us is going to gain a lot of knowledge, and we hope that everybody grows and Indian ophthalmology grows. So over to you, Dr. Anaga and Dr. Aarti, for introduction of our panelists. Thank you.
Dr. Aarti, you can start.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. So I really don't have to introduce our panelists for today, but just for the sake of formality, we have with us Professor Dr. Mahipal Sachdev sir, who is Chairman and Managing Director of Center for Sight. He received the prestigious Padma Shri Award in year 2007. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. Next, we have with us Dr. Ramamurthy sir, who is Chairman of Eye Foundation Group of Hospitals. He is trained VR surgeon. He has been past president of Tamil Nadu Ophthalmic Association and AIOS as well. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. Then we have with us Dr. Debashish Bhattacharya, sir, who is founder chairman of Disha Eye Hospitals. He has been past president for joining us, practitioner and innovator in the field of cataract surgery. Thank you so much, sir. Then next we have with us Dr. Gaurav Luthra, sir, who is director of Drishti Eye Institute, Dehradun. He specializes in advanced cataract and laser refractive surgeries. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. Next, we have with us Dr. Vardhaman Kankaria, sir, who is founder chairman of Asian Eye Hospital. He'll be joining us shortly. Next, we have with us Dr. Saurabh Patwardhan, sir, who is director of Nandadeep Eye Hospital and PG Institute in Maharashtra. Next, we have with us Dr. Digvijay Singh, sir, who is director of Noble Eye Care. He is past president of YOSI. He'll be joining us shortly. Next, we have with us Dr. Nilesh Kumar, who is medical director at Madhvi Netralaya in Bihar. He is an innovator and an excellent speaker. Thank you, Dr. Nilesh, for joining us. So moderating this session with me will be Dr. Anaga ma'am, who is medical director of Anil Eye Hospital in Mumbai. Over to you, Anaga ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Aarti. And again, a very warm welcome to all the panelists here. So let's start with our questions right away. My first question is to Dr. Nilesh Kumar. So considering that you have started your practice and you are into your practice for the next, say, few years down the line, at what point in time in your career or in your practice would you consider scaling up your practice?
Thank you, ma'am. And first, I would like to thank MOS for providing me this opportunity, and Santosh sir for constantly associating and encouraging YOSI to be a part of the MOS webinar. So it is a great opportunity for us also. And I think, ma'am, first question to me is a little intimidating with so many panelists who have already scaled up and shown us the way how it has to be done. So right now I am in first year of my practice. I have joined my father's clinic, who has been practicing for 25, 26 years. And what I saw him scaling up and what I think of scaling up are two different school of thoughts. And I'll just like to point both. My father believed in solo practice. So for him, it was his personal growth and as much as he could grow and he could handle that way. So his growth meant that he was seeing a certain number of patients, but the quality of care that he provided, he kept scaling that up. So he bought a phaco machine, like he started with Nidec, then he moved to compact, then he moved to White Signature Pro, and now we have acquired like Zeiss. So that is one way of scaling up, where you can scale up in the machine and the quality of care that you are giving. Even if he's a comprehensive ophthalmologist, he invested into OCT and perimetry and everything, and started doing all that to provide a wholesome experience to the patient at one center. But what I see and what I think the real growth that is in term of economics is when we start growing both horizontally and vertically, we are expanding the patient base. We get more doctors into our practice, and then we start to scale up. So that I think should happen once we have a certain number of patients, and those patients have belief in us. So the person who is having a solo practice, even if he's seeing 30 patients, he can handle 30 patients. Then those 30 patients have blind faith in him, so that when the doctor says that, okay, you on behalf of me, you go see this doctor in the adjoining OPD who is as competent in me, and you will get the same amount of care. That is the time you start scaling up. That is what I
thanks, Dr. Nilesh. What I meant by my question was, as you grow, Dr. Ramurthy sir, would you like to just chip in? What I meant was, in your journey of practice, at what point of time would you consider scaling up? Like he said, probably 30 patients, or when his father, or when he joined his father. So is there any specific time, or do you feel that the practice matures enough and then you need to take that step forward?
I think scaling up has to, first of all, thank you, Anaga, for the invitation, and thanks, MOS, for this, including me in this wonderful webinar. Looking forward to an interesting evening. I think scaling up can essentially happen in two ways. One is qualitative, another is quantitative. And the qualitative scaling up has to happen right through your career, whether it's in cataract surgery or refractive surgery or retinal treatment, or even the way you handle your OPD patients, the kind of facilities that you provide. So there has to be a constant updating, constant changing with the times. And then if it is a question of quantitatively increasing the number of people working under you, by that I mean not only just the number of doctors who work for you, but also the staff strength, the number of people who are coming in. It entirely depends upon your ability to provide the kind of care that you feel your patients deserve. So once, for example, the way it happened to me almost 30 years back is that when I started a small practice, and then I had enough patients coming in, I wanted to move over to a second city where I thought I had better chances. And I started going to these two places. Then I was supposed to look for somebody to take care of my first clinic. And since I had to manage two places, I started it this way. And slowly, as the practice volumes picked up, and as and when we felt, and nowadays it's also a question of introducing specialities. None of us are good enough to handle the entire gamut of ophthalmology. Once you feel the patients are coming in for you requiring a total eye care, you start introducing various specialities. Maybe things like glaucoma, vitreoretina will come in first, and oculoplasty, neuro-ophthalmology, etc. can follow up later. Right. And then, of course, it's a question of going into different geographies. That maybe will come up later.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Devashish sir has raised a hand. I think sir wants to say something.
Just wanted to say that at this stage, I think the young people would be probably interested in knowing some numericals around when to start their surgery center. Essentially, practice or working in a hospital is a choice. Now, if somebody is practicing, then at what stage would he consider starting his own surgery center? So I would say that if their average ticket size is between 25 to 30,000 for cataract surgery, then they must be seeing, as Nilesh pointed out, around 30 patients a day before they start a surgery center, or you can go to Anil Eye Hospital and do your surgeries. Because, that won't it won't be very economical. But if your average ticket size is like some high-end place, then this number can come down. Say if it is 50,000 is your average ticket size for cataract surgery, in that case, the logic being that you have to see 15 patients to get a conversion of 2 cataracts. So for 50 cataracts, below 50 cataracts a month, or 600 cataracts a year, this surgery center equation does not become profitable with that kind of ticket size. That's the kind of a bottom line.
That's a great input, sir. Thank you so much. Dr. Arti, yeah.
Yeah, so next question I'll ask Dr. Ramamurthy, sir. So what are the various business models for scaling up the practice? So if you can say a few things about this, sir.
I think, the first business model I would say is to improve the quality and the quantity of work that you do in your own center. You have no control over the competition that is around you. And constantly, my endeavor right through my career has been to do one better than what I was doing the previous year, whether it is by way of whether it's optical sales volumes, or whether it is by way of number of cataract surgeries, refractive surgeries, number of lasers that's being performed. So the constant comparison that we have is every year, as we all know, there is a month-on-month variation. For example, during February, March, etc., at least in the south, the numbers come down, while in April, May, and December, the number goes up. So our comparison is what we did 3 years back, 2 years back, 1 year back, and we aim at least a 20% growth year on year for the same month. And that is the target that we have, and that's the target that we share with the entire team within a particular center. And maybe since we would have a mix of audience, and many of them might be having single practices, the first endeavor should be to maximize their own practice. And more often what we find is it's the numbers alone maximizing that sometimes is a challenge. It's also going on to better procedures. Like when I started off with refractive surgery, it was all microkeratome LASIK, but now it's more of lenticular extraction or more of femtosecond based laser surgery, so that the ticket size significantly increases. Our conversions to torics and multifocals, like most centers, has gone to 40-50%. So that kind of a scaling up, both quantitatively and qualitatively, as I said earlier, is what is important. And as you feel that you're saturated in one particular center, either because of the amount of space that is available to you, or you feel that from a neighboring city or some place there is a constant inflow of patients coming to your center, then maybe that's time for you to think in terms of, once you have the administrative bandwidth as well as the professional bandwidth, that is, you have identified a group of doctors who are working with you, 1 or 2 of them can be shifted over to the other center to take care of that center. And there are also a couple of, it's not just the doctors alone who matter, the optometrists, the receptionists, the management staff, everyone plays a role. Once you have that kind of a bandwidth, you can think of expanding to second center, and then slowly, step by step, the growth can occur.
Right. So it's basically how you optimize and maximize the potential in the primary center and then move on to the next, so
Absolutely.
that you have both vertical as well as, yes. So Dr. Mahipal,
sorry ma'am, Debashri sir has some input to give.
No, like I thought the youngsters would be interested in, Mahipal would definitely give one serious input, which we always gives, that call it Center for Sight, or, don't give a name to your practice like Bhattacharya's Eye Clinic or something like that, which identifies or associates with you. So essentially, it has to be a general name. And in terms of composition, even if you are starting alone, you can involve your wife and your family or somebody and have a private limited company to start with, because that format is more, it has many advantages in many ways. And because, you pay less amount of taxes for that company, and, it separates from the very beginning a fund so that you can organically grow. Suppose you decide that I will plow the profits into growth, in whichever direction it is, like qualitative growth, as Ram was saying, any kind of thing. So I think a private limited company has a broader vision going forwards.
Yes, thank you, sir. So let's move on to the next question, Dr. Mahipal, sir. So whenever we think of scaling up, definitely funds become a major issue. So how does one arrange these funds? So if you compare loans versus funding, what would you suggest and what would you advise people?
So thank you very much. In the first instance, I'll wish to just say that it depends on how hungry you are for growth. And that's going to be the deciding factor as to what it is. Getting yourself bootstrapped is something which is the best. That means that internal resources, family, friends, etc. That's how one should always start. Then loans is always internal accruals, obviously, and loans, they are the cheapest form of capital. If you go on to funding from elsewhere, that becomes because if you have a rapid growth rate, so that becomes because you have given your equity at a particular time horizon, and if your growth is still very significant, so basically you have to see and assess as to what you want to achieve, where you want to go, and before you actually set out or you start a practice, you should have a 5-year or a 10-year plan as to what you want to achieve over the next 5 to 10 years. If your scope is limited in the sense that you say that, okay, today I am doing, say, 50 cataracts, and in 5 years I want to reach 200 cataracts or 150 cataracts, or I'm seeing 50 OPDs and I want to go to 100 OPDs, etc., then obviously it's a very slow, calibrated kind of a growth that you're wanting. So it's best to be bootstrapped or internal accruals, or at best take loans for paying up for your machines. But if you want to say that in 5 years from, say, 100 cataracts, I want to be 1,000 cataracts, then under those circumstances, it may be better to go in for funding, because obviously there is a risk appetite. When you are taking a loan, there is an EMI, there is a fixed kind of a thing that is there that you have to back to the bank. They have either your assets mortgaged or your property.
I joined the state.
So basically, from that perspective, you are not having any kind of a situation where if you fail, what do you do? While in a funding, at best, they can sell more shares of your this thing. So therefore, they are also taking a venture risk. So therefore, they would also want a higher return that is there. So those are in your lifespan where you are. I think the first phases of your growth need to be with your own funds, rather than right from the beginning, because we are in a service industry, and having a exponential growth is not possible. Having an exponential growth in a tech industry or whatever it is there. So therefore, right from the beginning, you could want to have a seed capital. So, but in an industry which is a service industry, like the other day only, there was a list of unicorns that have come in India. There is none in service industry, none whatsoever, whether it be the hotel industry, whether it be the medical industry, etc., etc. Unicorns are things which can exponentially scale up. That means every month you have a 15 to 20% growth on what you are doing. That will not happen in a service industry. So when you are in a service industry, do not go in for a seed capital. Right from the beginning, I think you should be working on your own capital. You should have measured strong growth basis that, and taking loan as it is. So I hope, and that is the cheapest form of capital. Private equity is the costliest form of capital, and debt or loan is the cheapest form of capital that is there. Obviously, your internal resources are the cheapest, but then comes debt. So I hope I have answered you.
Yes, yes. One more thing I wanted to ask is a lot of doctors fear taking loans or fear having a lot of debt on them,
Yes.
especially, and then they also feel that they should not spread themselves too thin by trying to grow fast. So, what is the tip that you can share with people regarding this fear of taking? Is it bad to take a loan, especially if somebody is already comfortable in his zone? So we always talk about going out of your comfort zone. Suppose somebody has already reached 5 6 years 10 years of their practice, and now you reach a kind of plateau and you think that should I scale up, but you don't want to take, I mean, should at that point of time, what are the factors that you need to decide to take a big loan to scale up, and should they be scared or not? This is something that I want you to speak.
So again, right, I said in the beginning, how hungry you are, what is the fire in your belly that is there or not. So it all depends your satiation level or how satisfied you get at what level. So if you want to go out and
Assuming there is a somebody wants to, so what care should he take?
obviously there is no
Doesn't get over.
obviously
Doesn't.
no risk to gain. So if you are hungry and you want to grow, then there is no alternative to that. The only thing that can be done, which is slightly more difficult to get, is to get a key man risk insurance. That is that God forbid if something happens to you, if you lose an arm or a leg or you possibly pop off, then under those circumstances there should be a key man risk. So that should be, because there have been instances where people have taken loans which have weighed heavily on them within ophthalmologist, and these guys died very young, and then their families went out to kind of try and sell their equipment which they were not able to sell. So that is obviously जो कहते हैं इंसान का गुर्दा कितना है या दम कितना है, that without funds you cannot grow in today's world, whether it is from whether it is from internal accrual debt or from private equity, because the technology is evolving so fast. It is not that you can sit with a torch and do a cataract surgery or go to a railway station and do an intracap and things like that. Your technology is moving so very fast that every other and these companies declare a machine obsolescence in say 7 years, 8 years, 10 years, no CMC, nothing, etc. So you have to keep on earning even to buy your machines and paying for the companies. So that is the key area that you need funds to grow. Otherwise, it's best not to get into venture. See, 90% of the people who are today coming out of medical colleges or who are doing their postgraduates are finding the barrier to entry very high, and they are preferring, and them being ladies, they are preferring to actually go in for a job as is in other specialties rather than try and set up something. So if you see historically, ophthalmology was a torch, a loop at that time, because I remember I bought a loop in 1982 and I was only one of the two residents who had a loop in RP Center, to an operating loop, Shin Nippon loop that I had got, which cost at that time 2,000 rupees. So things have changed dramatically from that particular point, and it is now a high entry barrier which is there, and this barrier is going to keep on increasing. And that is what you have to calibrate yourself. You have to understand what you are made of. Your DNA sequence is most important, that what you want to grow, whether you are hungry for any particular thing or not. I think that ground reality rules have to be laid. And taking loans is obviously, if you are hungry, then this is going to be a part and parcel. The only thing that I can add is bargain, negotiate to get the best rate, and maybe do a key man risk insurance, because God forbid if something happens to you, then your family is not out there on the roads trying to sell the equipment that you have purchased.
Before we move on to the next question, Dr. Nilesh, you were saying something.
Yeah, ma'am. I just wanted to make a point that I picked up actually from the panel discussion. I think last 1.5 years back from AIOS only, when Mahipal sir and Debas sir were in the panel, where they were telling about all the who should take and how to scale up your practice. Sir told that you should move to tier 2 or tier 3 city. If you are the first person who is starting, move to a tier 2 or tier 3 city, because ophthalmology is a very expensive branch. And if your running cost only is that high, if you are in a metro, your running cost becomes that high, your manpower is high, your rent is high. So you can't invest into your practice, your instruments. So that is one point that I took, and I think it has to be told to all the young ophthalmologists.
Thank you, Nilesh. Thank you so much. So we've discussed a lot about finances. Let's talk a little bit about HR management. So HR is an important aspect. So my next question is to Debashish sir. How do you manage your HR efficiently when you are scaling up your practice?
Well, first thing for beginners, I don't know. Today if they do their refraction, but there are many ophthalmologists who do refraction. So first thing, at least hire an optometrist who can do multiple things, like maybe take care of the investigative part. If your size is adequate enough, maybe you're seeing 10, 15 patients, it must have an optical. So, having a first line before the patient walks to the doctor, I think is important, because Dr. Ram said torics. Now he identifies a toric and he says, the optometrist says that you have cylindrical power and you have cataract. Maybe you ask your doctor if he is advising you cataracts about toric lenses. So these are things that help you to have hands. And obviously in smaller setups, multitasking, part-time employments are, part-time jobs. You can recruit better merit if you are going part-time. Somebody is teaching in school, the evening clinic of yours can be handled by a very efficient person in the evening, because he or she is looking for an extra work area. So, and I think we have to engage initially to train ourselves and evolve a model that keeps on training people, and always have this fact that if you are in cities, people will move out. So you must also have a wait list of people. Like many people, like in our scale, we keep an entire repository of things like these people have applied and they can fit in these skill sets. So they can, so always that list is there, because people will come and go. This is eventuality. Even for a race, people leave, because they are working in Disha and they go to Center for Sight, they get a raise. So that's the way it is. So HR has to be, training has to be a very continuous thing in the HR policy.
Right.
We have to, be affectionate and caring for every staff and get them into the feeling that this is yours and we're going to do it together. And there must be a definite mission, vision towards which we all, and the empathy and compassion must be there, which percolates from the doctor himself and herself, because so we must have these inputs. But I think it's most important that we have these words HR around our head, because ultimately people who do the biggest job.
Thank you, sir. Actually, for that reason, we had a separate webinar totally only on HR management. So it's not only just the induction, but the training, maintaining the staff, keeping them happy, as well as making the right balance. Because as your number of staff increases, that's, I think, the most costliest resource. The biggest heading ledger is basically the staff. So the professional fees and the staff expenses is something which is going to become a problem as we scale up. So I think, Dr. Saurabh, you wanted to say something? Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing, is that what I realize is that when you are growing, you have number of centers like many eye chains have. So we have to make sure that we have verticals of HR management. So many times what happens that as a single practitioner, when you start growing, you are looking at most of the thing yourself. And afterwards also, you keep on looking at different aspects of HR. Like you are looking into the HR management, training, as well as, creating the admin staff, training the admin staff, training a recruitment person, and all these things. So when it's given to a single person, that responsibility, usually what happens, it is done very inefficiently, and unfortunately that becomes the bottleneck. So if you have a verticals, like one person is involved in either recruitment or training all throughout all the centers, it is under that person, then it works fine. So that can be a good idea to begin with.
So having an HR consultant and an HR manager itself, as well as having an HRMS. So as the number of staff increases, having an HRMS system itself makes things much easier. Otherwise, as a small practitioner, you have say 25, 30 staff, it is easier to manage their attendance or payrolls. But as your numbers increase, I think it's good to have a proper software. Dr. Ramurthy sir, you were saying something?
Yeah, I think you got your sequence absolutely right. In the sense, next to finance is HR, which is most important. My dictum has always been I take care of my staff and they take care of my patients. And I think more than the buildings or the equipment that I have, the most valued what I own is the kind of people that I have around me. And by that, I'm not just talking about my consultants or senior doctors, but right down the line. And it's extremely important that you keep the entire team motivated. And by the team, I do not mean essentially it has to be 1,000, 1,200 people. It might be a small practice with just 3 or 4 people. That's how all of us started with. Essentially, they share the values, your vision, and they are willing to go along with you. That is what is will go to lead to the growth of the organization. And just as we want growth for ourselves, you also have to recognize that whether it's a driver or whether it's a OT sister or whether it's a receptionist, he or she is also looking forward to some growth within the organization, year on year, some kind of a progress. It is not a increment monetarily, but also in better training, better positioning, and also the soft skills development, so that what they were doing today is something much better compared to what they were doing 5 years back, not just in the salaries that they get, but also in the more fulfillment overall. That is the only way to retain your staff with you. And I think that if you are master that mantra, then growth is inevitable.
Yes, Dr. Debashish sir, your last word?
Yeah, I mean, taking from Ram, I think this makes it very apparent why, growth is so important in an organization. If you see the numbers are, you're tight on numbers, then there has to be some qualitative growth. Yeah, I mean, the organization should be moving, and it is a very good idea. I mean, to promote a person, an elder person in the organization, elder in the sense senior in the organization, into the role that Saurabh was saying. You will have efficiency around these people, and maybe give him the charge of the next center, or the optometrist trains the next optometrist, and kind of stuff.
Thank you so much, sir. So we'll now move on to the next question. Dr. Gaurav, welcome. Next question is to you. Hi.
Okay.
Now that we have started growing and we have started scaling up, there are a lot of issues that come up. So there is something called as economies of scale. How do you think we can achieve it? What's the best way to do it?
So I think, we already had a few things in that direction by all the senior people, and, they've kind of gone way beyond any of us who would have done that. But definitely, it's very important with, as it's been pointed out, that HR and investment into equipments, and then even, infrastructure. So everything matters, and depending on which kind of a city you are, because, when you're scaling up, the economies of scale can be dependent on many things. in some cities like metro cities, your economy of scale may be because of infrastructure costs may be very high, rentals may be very high. In certain cities, your HR costs may be much higher than others. And then, if you're in an individual practice, economies of scale won't work because, you can only utilize your equipments to that extent. So, it's very important early on in practice to start, developing into a group practice. Dr. Debashish said that, putting your center's name as not related to yourself is one of the most important first steps, because if you have to survive today in ophthalmology, it is probably either as a group practice or you're probably going to be working in a organization where you're doing a job. So if you're into your own practice, you will not go very far if you're going to go alone. So I think, the economies of scale have to set in as a group practice where, you will have more people working with you. So you have to probably start from day one and, add on people to your practice so that your microscopes, your OTs, your other equipments, only then can you kind of scale up once, that thing is there. I hope I'm on the right track. Anagha, did you want this or something else from me?
What I meant was, Dr. Mahipal sir, would you like to comment on it?
I don't know economies of scale. There are two things. One thing, when you're looking at economies of scale, you have to look at consumable cost and machine utilization, power utilization. So these are three things that I will broadly break up into the economies of scale. So manpower utilization, I would say first, because having super specialist in one particular center which has X number of patients may be having a difficulty. So either you can have part-time people who can be coming for you for doing as regards economies of scale, because you need a retina guy. If you need a retina guy 6 half days a week or maybe 4 half days a week, you would need a plastic guy maybe once a week or two half days a week, etc., or a squint guy. So that economies of scale you have to do as regards manpower. So if you have multiple centers, we use our super specialist or specialist, as you can say, to go to different centers so that there is an economy of scale vis-a-vis the manpower. So that is the first thing, that manpower optimal utilization should be there. And if you have a person who can do maybe a cataract along with a squint surgery, or maybe also do nowadays a retina person says I don't want to do cataracts, or a squint person says that I'll just do squint. So you need to have that first thing as economy of scale. The second thing is that if you have more people using the machine, that again is something that that you have to. I personally don't believe letting out my machine to other people. It's like if you have a wife, you will keep your wife much more preciously and she will last you much longer. But if you are using a machine or a lady who can be anybody's wife or anybody, then it's going to have a very poor life span. So that is again something that you have to decide as to what it is. So I would not want to let out my machine to anybody to come and use, because your machine at times could be the USP for your center or for you, right? And if you are allowing anybody to use that, the people can come into your center and undercut you. Supposing for today, my guiding principle is that whatever is the highest that is being charged for a particular procedure in Delhi, I would want to charge maybe 5% more than that. So if I am charging, say, 1,42,000 for a smile, and I say take about 70,000 from another person to do a smile, so I might as well, because he was losing a patient of smile, he will come there and maybe do the patient at 90,000 or 1 lakh rupees and saying, okay, I'm going to center for sight, I'm using the same machine, same infrastructure. So I am not a firm believer of that. So optimization of this thing as regards the scale has to be that you have to generate enough, and you can have more centers with centers which have limited, which have the superstructure or the super specialization, so that you can pour in this thing either from more doctors who are employed or who are working with you, or from more centers that are there. And the third,
regarding consumables, regarding consumables, sir.
Third point is regarding the consumable. Regarding the consumables, I think again it's better to focus yourself on 1 or 2 companies. That's what I prefer to do, and give them a lion's share of what it is. Obviously, the other company people. So if somebody has to say sell 1,000 intraocular lenses and he has to go to 20 doctors, there will be a marketing cost or a sales cost that person will have. But supposing he comes to me and say that, okay, fine, I say that I'm doing a deal for 10,000 intraocular lenses a year, obviously I will get a better price. So being everywhere would not give you the economies of scale, and then buying the same machine over and over again would also give you a better pricing, etc. If you do a deal for 1 machine or you do a deal for 10 machines, so that is there. So that is what I call as economies of scale. And then even manpower allocation, apart from medical manpower allocation, like your HR or your marketing or your branding, etc., that you can, again, economies of scale are there. The SOPs, like we have a central quality team. There are 3 people who are assessors of NABH also, who are there. So they can take care of all the centers. So that again adds to economies of scale. And that is where the corporate practice or multi-centers are working in, that you are getting economies of scale. As you grow from one stage to the next, your costs go up like anything. And it is only when you reach a critical mass that these economies of scale come into play.
But despite that, the EBITDA goes on reducing.
It goes on reducing for a while and then it goes on increasing. See, the point is, you are saying that the EBITDA gets reduced because if I am opening 10 greenfield centers, they are going to bleed. So if you remove my 10 greenfield centers, the EBITDA needs to be calculated on mature centers, semi-mature centers, and new centers. So if you look
Separately.
separately. So if you look at the mature centers, your EBITDA keeps on growing up to a particular point where you reach, until, of course, you are getting more and more growth to overcome the inflationary trends. There is an inflationary trend that has to happen. Your rents are going to go up, your manpower cost is going, electricity, everything is going up. So your growth has to be more than that. So that is the thing. So EBITDA degrowing is because of the speed of new center opening. It has not got to do, like if you have opened 3, 4, I don't know how many, 2, 3, 4 new centers, your EBITDA is going to go down because you are going to bleed. But the sensible thing that you are doing is that you are becoming the master of your backyard. It is not that you should become a master. I don't have to go and put a jhanda in, say, Sri Lanka, or I have to do it in Tamil Nadu or someplace because I'm not known there. It is to concentrate and consolidate that you are the numero uno in that particular locality that you are. So your gestation period will be less and your EBITDA will not fall to that extent. But EBITDA falling in a new center is something acceptable that everybody accepts.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, another thing about the instruments,
Yes, sir.
I think it's always better, like what Mahipal said, that you give, you can keep 2, but it's better, like there are companies who have consumables, at the same time they have equipments, and it's wise to bundle them together.
Yeah.
At least for the youngsters, because all of every product, the established products, and you talk to your peers and you can find out the right product mix. And it's better to give, keep 2 companies and bargain, and then settle for one, and give them a land share. That's what they're looking for. And you become a long-term associate. They also treat you better. And you get better economies of scale through that.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
So following the discussion, I'll ask the next question to Dr. Saurabh. Which expense heads are impacted due to scaling up, and how difficult is it to manage? And if you can suggest us, how can we do it effectively?
I think Mahipal sir, I think elaborately told about the expenses part. Just to summarize or make it brief, you will have some expenses which are variable, so they will keep on increasing as your work is increasing. And in those variable expenses, I think these economies of scale are very important, because if you have huge IOL, consumption or other consumption, I think in variable expenses you can bring it down. Okay, so variable expenses is something which is going to go down if you are scaling up slowly. But you have to concentrate on the fixed expenses. So when you are growing up, I think initially what happens, the fixed expenses are a lot, because you have to pay fixed staff salary, you have to pay fixed rents, and also for EMIs or other things for bringing in more equipment, and that something is which bleeds you initially a lot. So what you have to do when you are scaling up is that focus on fixed expenses first. Try to reduce them to minimum when you are growing, so that you can have more or earlier what do you call return of your investment. And as the fixed expense also includes the higher staff salaries, like the administrative staff or the managers. So if you have more centers, I think that helps in reducing per center cost of these higher staffs, and which is what most of the chains are doing. So just to divide, just start thinking whether this is a variable expense or this is a fixed expense. Variable expense you can easily manage, once you have scales up. So it's because many times what happens, doctors, they try to bargain on maybe IOL and consumables a lot, but they don't think about the fixed cost to begin with. So I think that is what I would like to say about the expenses part.
I think the most effective way to manage is to have deep pockets so that you can reduce. Yes, sir, Dr. Debashish, sir. Yes.
See, one thing is one of the about the 7-10% goes on rent. Other infrastructure. So essentially, you can look for an angel investor in that area or have a revenue sharing model there, where you actually, if it is an expensive city place, like, the rent is high and all that. So people, many developers and good people also, they feel a proper utilization of the property and seek a continuous income. So that could be where you can, reduce that infrastructure cost. And for youngsters, primarily, let us assume that what is the market? There is a welfare market, which the government, NGO, that's one market. The second is an aspirational market, which is the private healthcare. And this private healthcare, the patients would first go to a not so established practice, but a near to home, hospital would be, some facilitated people, like people with CGHS, health schemes, Ayushman Bharat. In our West Bengal, it's Shastro Shati. So you must be enlisted with all of this, ESI. So you must get your center enlisted with all of this, so that you can also have the benefit of economies of scale. Sleeping costs is the biggest cost of a thing. As Mahipal was pointing out, like, plan your consultants properly, because that is the most expensive component. If they come and they sit and they sleep, it's very costly for the whole thing system.
Thank you, sir. So we move on to the next question. Dr. Ramurthy, sir. We are coming back to finances because I think that is the most important part in scaling up. We know about bottom line and top line. Should we compromise bottom line for top line? And which do you think is more important?
Obviously, bottom line, because that's what I take home.
Yeah.
So I think I would definitely keep an eye on the top line, but at the same time, I would not spend excessively so that my bottom line gets adversely impacted. Whatever growth we have achieved is by internal accruals. Because in the earlier part of our career, we had some borrowings, but subsequently it has been essentially through what we have generated, the funds we have generated ourselves. And it has been by exercising the right kind of prudence in all our dealings. At the same time, going for quality, whether it's be personnel, infrastructure, or equipment. The right quality definitely comes at the right price. As far as we're able to balance the two of them, we're able to grow, at the same time ensure that the bottom line is not adversely impacted. Sometimes there are short-term suggestions about splurging on certain advertisements, spending or going for an equipment which is still not tried and tested, even though you have something which can already serve the purpose, which can adversely impact your what you finally is left behind in your hands. So top line is what percolates down to the bottom line. But at the same time, to my mind at least, it's extremely important to keep a keen eye on the bottom line and ensure that it stays healthy. If at the cost of going back a little bit, if I can just add a quick word about economies of scale, because we got a grand overview from stalwarts who have already got it all done and have made it in their lives. But I'm sure we have some youngsters, some young ophthalmologists also listening in. And whenever you have a large volume of intraocular lenses or any consumable that's needed, or a group of, you have a strength to buy a group of a number of equipments, your bargaining power definitely goes up. Obviously, when you have multiple centers, you are ordering, we're able to order 1,000 lenses, 2,000 lenses per month. The cost at which I would get the lens would be much better than what the cost at which a youngster ordering 20 or 30 lenses might. But obviously, this would take time to reach that level. Before going there, right now I'm looking at a group where they're talking about CMC's comprehensive maintenance contract for their LASIK machines, which has gone up quite substantially, exponentially. Obviously, if these people can get together and a group of them can order lenses, intraocular lenses together, or buy equipments together, or negotiate for the service contract together. Once the company sees there is a certain amount of a larger piece of cake coming their way, then they are willing to listen and compromise on prices. So till such time as you are able to support large numbers on your own, maybe it's a good idea to optimize resources, get together, and then form a group which can negotiate with these companies.
Dr. Vardhaman, how frequently do you go through the financials when you are with your CA or yourself?
Right. So basically, I think as a rule, we go through the financials. We have a meeting every 2 weeks' time. Currently, of course, we have only 2 centers. One is in Pune, one is in Ahmednagar. So from the other center point of view, we usually have Zoom meetings with them every 2 weeks' time. And for our Pune center at Asian Eye Hospital, we have a meeting with our team every 2 weeks regarding the finances. And we have a meeting with the CA every month, typically. So that is how we try to look at what's happening with the finances. Yeah.
Dr. Aarti, yeah.
So moving on to next question. Next question is to Dr. Mahipal sir. What do you think, which is better, to scale up organically or to scale up by mergers? Your views on that?
I have lots of views on that. That will take another. See, the dynamics of ophthalmology are changing, and it's for real. I personally feel that what we were when we started and what we will be in the next 5 to 10 years is going to be different, because you have big bulge private equity players who are into ophthalmology, and you can't stop them. That's a statement of fact that is there. And coming back to the previous thing, they are more bothered about the rapid growth in the top line rather than the bottom line. So, as a context, you have to see where you are, at what stage you are. See, getting a rapid growth of, say, 30, 40, 50% year on year may be more important, because till you get a top line, you won't get a bottom line. Bottom line will definitely come, but they have money to burn. So we are today in a cycle where people are wanting to grow both the top line and the bottom line. And when you are looking at the bottom line, that's aggregation. There are practices that are being, I don't know, you people are in Maharashtra, and Maharashtra always leads the pack. I think entire Bombay, half of Bombay is willing to sell their practices today. And I don't know for what reason, maybe to get the money and then maybe chill out or whatever it is. But that's what's happening, and that's the real truth. There are certain things that you have to do to assess what is the longevity of the practice, not just be mere aggregators. Today, what is happening is to merely just aggregate the practice, and that is what is happening. So if you have to grow, you cannot grow with your own money. That is very clear from the point of view of acquisition, because the multiples have gone higher. The return on capital for a person of an individual who is going to buy a practice is going to be zilch. So if you are, say, going to buy a practice at, say, 9x or an 8x, you are paying tax-paid money to that person. And when you get back the money, you have to first pay tax on it. And therefore, your return on capital is sub 7-8%, which does not make sense to anybody. You would rather keep that money in a fixed deposit and get that kind of a thing. But if your valuation is the game and you have to get out buying practices and get out, and that's what's happening with these big bulge private equity players, this is something that is going to be changing the scenario and the landscape of ophthalmology over the next couple of years. It has changed. I have seen the change over the last 2-3 years in such a dramatic manner. You can't write off a TPG or a General Atlantic or a Kedara or a Quadria or anybody or a Mahindra. So basically, these are guys who are in the game to make a quick buck. So there, if you ask me as an individual, I am the most conservative as regarding doing the acquisition, because I am looking at it at long term. They are saying to a doctor that we will tie you for 5 years and 7 years, and after that you can go anywhere and the place. So ultimately the practice will tank. But their game is to do an IPO in 2-3 years, make their money and get out, because all of them are in minorities, significant minorities, 18%, 20%, 25%. So there the game is different, and that's not good for a person who is selling his practice. So the question has a very wide connotation. I don't know what exactly you want to say. So it depends on your lakshya क्या है. अगर आपने पैसा बना के valuation बना के निकलना है, तो obviously the best way is to buy practices, aggregate and get out. That's the thing. But if you want solid growth, there has to be a good mishran of both the organic and the inorganic. It cannot be just acquisition and not do it, because the ultimate best ROCE or the return on capital employed comes only through the green fields or the new centers that you are creating. Private equity will always tell you acquisition. So that's where the money has come in, unfortunately or fortunately or whatever it is. That is the way the entire stream is going, which is there. So I would personally want to do both greenfields and brownfields. If I do one brownfield, I want to do maybe 2 greenfields. Devashish.
Devashish, sir.
Yeah, Mahipal's seen both sides. So, suddenly there is a lot of risk capital which has come. And one must understand that, the risk capital which has come, is it justifiable in ophthalmology with the growth rate that is there? Now, just buying off maybe somebody who says, I've struggled hard enough, let me take a break or something like this. 10x is the maximum that they offer you on EBITDA. Now, 10x is what you're going to make that in 10 years' time, right? Hey, somebody is paying you upfront. So what sense does it make? That's what the kind of deals I'm hearing. So, this kind of, if somebody has a retirement mode or something like that, that's fine enough. When there's no legacy or, he doesn't have a plan or he hasn't planned himself. Maybe there are people in the practices of the same age group. He doesn't know whom to actually give it. So these kind of internal rearrangements are something else where you have to. But organic thing, one must realize it's a good idea to see that what the market is growing. The lens companies or the pharma companies, they give you a good idea month to month of what the picture is. Now, if you are growing higher than that, and if you have seen potential, where Mahipal said that you have a better brand width, so there the borrowing criteria would be, say, whatever we can comfortably pay in 5 years, because that center has to, have a healthy bottom line within 5 years. You can't even bleed after 5 years. Mahipal will close a center if he's not seeing a bottom line in 5 years' time, because he cannot keep on bleeding perennial. So, and for a practice also, for a startup, also, if you are not doing, you're not seeing healthy bottom lines, say, please, I think in practices we get mixed up between the professional as a doctor and the another point, and going for the scheme patients or passing on scheme patients and that kind of thing. Less important patients, maybe a very elderly or somebody. You have to sort out those patients. The reception has to do a very smart work there, and that's how we did it initially, because it started from my practice. So This is how we did it when we back in the 90s. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. My next question is to Dr. Digvijay. So, how do we maintain the quality of services when we try to scale up?
Yeah, actually, that's a very good question, and I think it is also one of the reasons why a lot of us as ophthalmologists continue to be solo players, because we believe that we can do the best that we can for our patients. But actually, if you do follow protocols and how things are done, and you set that up and you follow that system in one center, then that center can be replicated, in a similar way to other centers. So as far as the quality of the clinical outcomes is concerned, obviously it's the selection of the right one simply replicate helps in that process, and following the accreditation as well.
I think his voice is cracking. Some signal issue looks like.
He's traveling probably, ma'am.
Yeah.
So if any of the panelists wants to give some input on that, how to maintain the quality of services?
I think we can.
I will just.
Yeah.
I think. Rather than how to make keep the quality intact, I think most important thing is to keep on taking feedback from patients about the quality of services that you are providing. I think once you start taking good feedbacks try to take feedback from each and every patient, and that will guide you easily how you can improve the quality of your services. I think patients are the best teachers in terms of quality of services.
Yeah, just in continuation to that question, Dr. Vardhaman, I think basically when you set up systems and processes, then they are basically lay down the foundation for good quality. So how do you set up systems and processes for scaling up?
So basically, I think as we have discussed, like whenever you are scaling up, like there is always this example of Starbucks. They say that Starbucks was actually started like few decades back, but when they actually created a model which they found that it could be replicable and it was very effective, that is when they really scaled up very fast. So basically, like for example, when a patient comes to your clinic, whether it is a refractive surgery patient or a cataract surgery patient, if there are set protocols which are followed, the way the patient has been evaluated, probably also the guidelines in which the patient has been chosen to undergo certain kind of refractive surgery or certain kind of cataract procedure. And if you're training, so it is matter of training and retraining of your staff at the level of your reception, your optometrist, and also your doctors, that everybody speaks the same language. And probably it is a good idea that from your own primary center, people that who are probably one of your best people can be put up in other centers when the centers are starting, because they know the DNA of your model, and they are the ones who will make sure that it runs exactly in the same way. So the SOPs could be created in the theoretical manner. Like for example, for refractive surgery, what we do is when the patient comes, the patient has been, there is a way, there is only one person who tells what exactly is going to be happening. There is a file which will be given to the patient, which has all the steps of evaluations. It has the file, which has all the technologies. The patients are given a video to see before the patient is seeing a consultant, so that they are already aware about different technologies. And at the end, when the patient is informed, when he sees the consultant and the consultant has been trained in your system, he also knows how to talk to the patient in the same language. So basically, if we have these SOPs in place, the quality control can be actually, in a way, replicable, and it can do well. Yeah.
A lot of effort goes into this, and I think that forms the crux of our systems. And that should be a dynamic process, because you need to keep improvising that along with time.
Absolutely.
Let's go on to the next question.
Yeah. So next question I'll ask to Ramamurthy sir. So what should be the ideal speed during the scaling up? I mean, how does one decide how fast or how slow to move in the scaling up process?
So you're
muted.
It's something like asking how fast I should drive my car. I think it entirely depends upon the risk appetite of that particular person. I think that has already been discussed. Let's understand one thing. it's not even necessary that we need to be constantly scaling up. It may not be in the DNA of every person to do that. As far as you are comfortable doing it, and I believe that we need not necessarily look at the people who are far ahead and who are talking in terms of 50, 60 centers, 70 centers, etc. But you have to be, while it's important to come out of your comfort zone to grow, but at the same time, you need not go too far from that. So essentially, what at least the way I have grown is that I will always ensure that whatever I'm doing is within manageable limits. Even if something goes wrong, if I feel that I would be able to cut my losses and come out of it. So whether you are investing on an equipment, infrastructure, or a new place, essentially it has to be within manageable limits. So obviously, somebody who has 20 centers already can scale up much faster. A young person who has just his first center, which has matured, he's going to take it up step by step. I'm really not, this talk about equity, raising funds from outside, etc. is okay. But that's once you have reached a certain level of understanding and maturity. But at least in the initial stages, I believe that you have to be doing it in a way that's comfortable to you, which makes where your family and friends are with you, we are supportive to you.
So there's no specific answer, Dr. Devashish sir. Yes.
Yeah, like if you have, going by that 30 patients, if you feel that you have 30 patients coming from a locality, which is further off, because this near to home centers are becoming, quite, people can't travel now. At least their people who bring them, their time is valuable. So this could be a good earmark. And if you have 30 patients coming from a particular locality, it's very good that you start up. It's very safe to start a.
So 30 patients a day or 30 patients a month?
30 patients a day from a particular area. But again, I told you about the ticket size. If it is your ticket size, it could well be 15 patients.
Right.
So you start a clinic, may not be a surgery center, but you can start a clinic.
Yeah, OPD center. Right. So I think everybody has their own way of growing and scaling up. You need to do what suits best to you. Dr. Mahipal sir, wanted to ask you, since you are so well versed with financial parameters, how do you set your EBITDA targets for yourself on your way to scaling up? And what is your advice to others?
So basically, I think it depends. It has to be down up. So you have to have your team actually suggesting as to what is going to be the revenue that they will be getting over the months. They need to take the cyclical trends as to whether you're in the monsoons or you are in a Diwali month or you are, say now, Shrad aa jayenge, those kind of things. So it's a down up thing that we kind of work on. That it comes from the centers. See, technically, I will be talking more about multi-center, but it comes from each center. And then it goes on to the cluster, and then it goes on to the level of the director of operations and director of the business development, who will be able to come to a particular level that this is what it is, and then it comes to the board. So therein you have to set as to what is going to be your budget, what is going to be your top line, what is going to be your COGS, what is going to be your marketing spend, and at the end, what is going to be your EBITDA. So that is how we set on that. And then you have to track it on I would say you have to track it not on a monthly basis, but as Kankaria said, Vardhaman, that he does it 2 weekly. I think we break it down to every day. We don't break down the EBITDA to every day, but there is a daily sales reports that most of us in the groups that we do, that what is the expected sale, what is the pro rata, and how are you comparing to the previous year. Most of the people who might be listening don't do that, but that is very important for you to actually see that whether you are getting a growth or not. And then ultimately cost containments has to be there. And then if you are overspending on something, whether it even be on marketing, advertising, budgets, or even cost of consumables, there are people like there is an EY guy whose brother is an ophthalmologist, mother is an ophthalmologist in Bombay, Kaiwan. He takes 10% of the money that he saves. So when you are looking at the EBITDA, if you are saving 1 rupee, it is equivalent to say 4 rupees of revenue that you are doing. So per square foot electricity cost has to be looked at, per manpower. If you have to look at as to what is each manpower contributing to as revenue and what is each manpower contributing to as regards EBITDA, not contributing, but as to say per doctor multiplier, per doctor EBITDA, per manpower, this thing. So those are the nitty-gritties that you have to do. You have to standardize them across the group, and then you have to work on the EBITDA, that this is the EBITDA that you need to have. Then you need to have comparisons. There is no harm in fishing out the balance sheet of somebody else from the company corporate website, etc., and seeing as to what they are, what are their cost of goods, what are their consumables, what are their doctor costs. And then you need to kind of see that, for example, if my doctor cost is say today, my HR cost is say 42%, 43, I know it is on the higher side as compared to some other groups who have 32, 33%. So that is ultimately what it filters down on the EBITDA, and that's how you have to go and look at each and every subset to get to an EBITDA figure as to what is acceptable and how you have to grow. Today, companies in ophthalmology are valued on EBITDA. Tomorrow, when you do an IPO, you will be valued on PAT. So that is the thing. I hope I have answered your question, or you want some other thing?
Yes, and then when you how does it come from up to down again, and then the specific EBITDA targets to each center, because each will be different.
And when you have to come on the EBITDA apart from doctor and all, then you have to divide it as a subspecialty. That means how many cataracts you are going to do, how many refractives you are going to do, what is the procedure, whether you are growing only in volume or you are growing in value. Like my growth comes 50% because of value and 50% because of volume. So those are the things that you have to do. Sorry, now you were saying, can you just repeat the question?
No, exactly. I was just saying that since you said from down up, once all the analytics has been done, and then you'll have to probably go from up to down again. How does it reach each center as to what would be their target EBITDA? Because each center would be growing at a different pace.
Yeah, so that is what I'm saying, that the center has to say. So if I have a new center, I want a 30-40% growth year on year. If I have a mature center, say like my subsidiary enclave, even if I put a double-digit target, that's going to be a stretch in the sense that because it's a mature center, you are, as Ram said, you are cramped for space. You cannot run them through, etc., etc. So then either you have to expand, etc. So that has to be modulated as to a new center, a semi-mature center, and a mature center. So you divide them onto those three things, and then go. If you are going to a new place, possibly like you did, then you have to see that what is the cost of land or cost of money that you have spent on taking that new place. What is your investment in new equipment, etc., in new manpower, and therefore that has to translate into EBITDA. So that's going to be per person EBITDA or per person revenue that's going to come, and per square foot of space that you are using as to what it is. So your center should also be looked at from a per area, this thing, and per manpower that is there, and specifically also per doctor that is there, and then the verticals.
I think we'll need to have one whole webinar only on EBITDA.
the way
you saying something?
Yeah, I think Maipal said it all. But the way we look at it also is that it's not just center-wise, it's also segment-wise, vertical-wise, whether it's opticals, vitreoretinal surgery, cataract, refractive surgery. Because you might look at this, if you're just looking at the broad overview of how a sector is performing, there may be segments which are cannibalizing the profits from other areas. So we want to ensure that each one of them is a profit center of its own. And as you said, it's extremely important that it's not that we sit down and discuss with each other every day about the EBITDA or the top line. But if you are getting an overview of what's happening across centers, across the different segments, which are able to quickly run through on a day-to-day basis, and maybe have an analytical meeting once a month, that is what will lead to a very focused growth. And comparison with month on month, the previous year, the same month, what happened 2 years back, 3 years back, what happened, what is the rate of growth, what is your targeted growth? For example, each one of us have own targets. And once you're reaching that, if you enhance the kind of perquisites so the incentivize people to perform, I believe that's a very strong way of growth, and that also helps.
In one word, what would be your target growth, sir, in percent-wise? Dr. Ramurthy, sir, everybody, just one word.
20%.
Mahipal, sir? 30%.
30%, sir.
Dr. Gaurav?
If I'm doing 20%, I'll be very happy.
Dr. Nilesh?
To double the practice in 5 years. So it around 15 to 20%, I think.
Dr. Devashish, sir?
20%.
Dr. Vardhaman?
20%. Yes.
Dr. Digvijay?
See, as a young, I think as a younger practice, I would always want to look at 25-30% kind of growth.
I think Dr. Santosh?
What's your target, Anaga? Actually,
Anaga, we should hear from you. Many of these questions
we want to hear from you.
Answers.
In fact, all the panelists want to hear from your mouth. What is your target?
Will not give it
all the questions which you were asking about EBITDA, what should be the target, how should you decide where to go, how should you grow, everything is related to your practice. So I want answer from you.
Today we are in a webinar where we are all super seniors here. We have to learn so much. But my target is 30%.
30%.
Great.
Entirely depends upon the maturity of that particular center also.
Right.
Yeah, each place has different culture of practice. Culture of practice, even in Maharashtra, all across, culture of practice in Mumbai is different, in Pune it is different. I'm sure in rural areas it is different, in Kolhapur, in Chennai it is different, in Coimbatore it is different, in Delhi it is different.
So I think
you cannot have a single rule, but it was a great learning.
The younger you are, the higher you need to jump.
No, apart from that, what is also more important is whether you are opening new centers or not. Having the same center growth, something even if you get a double digit 15, the CAGR of ophthalmology is about 14%. That's at a gross national level that they are looking at. So if you are looking at a same center growth, I think even if you are doing a 14% or 12 to 14% growth, that's phenomenal, because that's how the industry is growing. But if you are adding new centers like you are, or like Dr. Ramamurthy is, I think Devashish is adding a multi-specialty, then we'll ask him the growth, because one multi-specialty may give him all ophthalmology. So then your numbers should be in the more than 25-30%. That's what it is. But same center growth, mid-teens is a very good number. That's what I feel.
Very good point.
Still have 3 more questions. Dr. Aarti, let's rush through.
Yeah, so my next question is to Dr. Gaurav. I thought maybe Anaga ma'am, I'll ask you this question. Let's see Dr. Gaurav what he has to say. So what is more effective way to increase the revenue? Is it the ticket size or the volumes?
I think both are very important. And in fact, as some people have previously said, you can have your junior consultants, maybe charging a slightly smaller fee. So the ticket size will not be important, the volumes. In fact, I feel that, right mix today in the change scenario, you have a lot of empanelment patients also walking in. And because, you want to keep all your, you need to the numbers of your OPD as well to generate procedures and to keep your equipments in use. So you can have other consultants associated with you so that, that the machines are running all the time. And then the ticket size is very important, because then for your premium procedures and to enhance your practice and to really, kick the top line above, you will need a ticket size to grow as well. So the premium services can drive the, ticket, this thing size. And whereas the, all your empanelments and those fixed price like CGHS, ECHS, and many of the empanelments, they can keep your machines running. And so the numbers and volumes also are very equal. I would say both are very, very important. If somebody has a different view, I would love to hear that.
I think, I think Gaurav said it all, but I feel ticket size is what drives growth. For example, when you ask me what's my target, when I said 20%, is definitely my practice volumes is definitely not growing by 20%. Correct me if I'm wrong, is having a volume growth of 20% year on year. When we talk about it's only the revenue, and that essentially happens by enhancing the kind of procedures that you are doing, by offering better procedures, at the same time increasing the cost of the procedures adjusted to inflation.
So if I may ask, sir, how much is the percentage of growth in volumes?
Well, again, it depends upon the
average.
How long my centers around. For example, for my
flagship
centers that have come up recently, is 20-25% is growth in volumes that we experience, because year on year there can be a faster growth. But a mature center which has been there for 20-25 years, we see a growth of only about 5 to 6%. Most of the growth comes because of increase in the enhancement of the procedures and ticket size.
So there has always been one question, that we do not increase the charges of our surgeries that much every year, but our increments that we give to our staff usually increases at a much higher rate. So I think that tips the balance usually, that becomes more and more difficult year on year to manage that. Anyway, that's it.
See, that is why you need growth. As I
Yes, absolutely.
Because
absolutely.
That is why an organization needs constant growth, and you need to upscale. And essentially, I mean, when you are started, you've rolled out, say, I mean, in our language, I mean, Ram or Mahipal's. Suppose we have rolled out 4 or 5 centers in Disha's model. So they mature in 3-4 years. So then you see more growth. And then probably the next 2 years, probably you didn't do as much. Then the growth comes down. So yes, essentially, it is mature centers don't grow more than 5.
Mature, what is your definition of mature?
I mean, after 7-8 years, I think it should mature.
I didn't understand the definition of mature. Is it just operational break-even or capital break-even? What exactly?
No. Mature is a center like in the curve of an organization. I think it is like it would. It goes like this. I mean,
it's reaching towards plateau, I think, probably.
In technology models, they have a they say it's a dog's life company. So 10, 12 years, 20 years, that's the maximum the company's size age is. So whatever they have to do is do in that. They can bring in another innovation, try something else and do something else. That's another thing. In our profession, it is perennial. It can continue till the last day of your life. But after 10, 15 years, I don't think all growth will be just incremental as we are talking about. 3, 4, 5%. And that stage, I think one should attain by 10 years, 7 to 10 years.
The next question is to you itself. So now we have all talked about growth and economics and all finances of it. What are the hurdles that we usually face commonly during scaling up? Other than...
Who's taking up this question?
For you, sir.
This is for you.
So, essentially the hurdles are that today the main hurdles have been pointed out, like the entry level into practice. I mean, a full-blown setup is the main hurdle. So the youngsters have to find out various ways and combinations to get there. It could be group practice. It could be the initial struggles will be there. The teething problems will be there. And the challenges which keep on coming with time is, the next challenges, I mean, after a good practice, I think, is the passing on the baton. Like, I think after 30 years of a practice, that comes, or an organization that comes, that what do we do with that practice? So the thought of the challenge area and on a particular area and on a particular vision. Now, there has to be some continuity, some propagation. That is the ultimate goal of everybody, right? So even, I mean, if there is no inheritance, family businesses do well. But if there is no inheritance, we must look at like-minded people, younger people who can take it forwards So all this are macro challenges. Day-to-day challenges are there. I think one is this, what Ramamurthy pointed out, is compassionate capitalism, or, as technocrats, we have this inkling of, going for some technology, a very new technology, which may be very expensive, just to beat the competition. If you are wrong, you might land up into problems. So I think for me, I'm more on the safer side. I would always go by the second mover's advantage, because the second mover is a person who goes to the market understanding everything. And first movers' advantages are there. Maipal will always disagree with me that, he is a very disruptive person. So I go into the market knowing fully well that this is what it can do. Now let us, get in. But there, people, if you want to disrupt by, borrowing too much or something, you might end up having a problem. And stay.
Dr. Ramamurthy sir, Dr. Maipal sir, your ideas?
One aspect I strongly disagree with you, Devashish, is your aging factor. The 50s and 55 is the new 30s now. Otherwise, you and me won't be here.
That's true, Ram. That's true. But we must give it a thought. At least almost see 10 years from now what is to come. So
a specific question, Anaga, as to what is the challenge in scaling up, my two words would be competition and retention. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So we'll ask the next question to Dr. Ramamurthy sir, and this will be the last question for this session. So have there been any setbacks during scaling up in your experience, sir? And if you can give us some tips how to avoid them.
Yeah, one setback was when I set up a good multi-specialty hospital, started an eye clinic. The owners were extremely good, and this happened almost 20 years back. And I was given the space. I thought it's a very established hospital. Why shouldn't I be doing well? So went up, appointed a doctor, and started working there. But within a year or so, I realized that this is not going to work for me. But in ophthalmology, in a multi-specialty setup, which is highly successful, comes at the bottom of the rung, at least in those days. And then I just cut my losses, closed my practice, and came out of it. But you always learn from your mistakes, from your follies, from your failures. So one thing I kept away from doing is to go ahead and get involved in a multi-specialty setup, though I know that it has worked for some others. And there's another very important factor that I've learned is to, where I said earlier also, value more than anything else the kind of personnel that you have. They are your greatest wealth. Sometimes just because they expect a pass, and somebody who has been given a 8% raise or a 10% raise comes demanding for a 15% raise, he or she might already be having an offer in hand. And I've just stuck on to what I offered and lost a very key personnel. So it's not that I'm indiscriminate about what I do, but then I do believe that keeping your flock intact is the most important strength that needs to be cultivated.
Great input, sir. Dr. Maipal sir, would you like to also add in this? I don't know if he's there. Anybody would like to add anything? And any comments? Concluding comments, yes.
Yeah. So it was a great webinar, and everybody was talking about empanelment. So our next webinar with YOSI will be tips for empanelment for youngsters. How to get empanelment. So Aarti, you will have to start working on that.
Sure, sir. Sure.
Second thing is that Dr. Mahipal Sachdev, as always, he's the opening batsman like Virendra Sehwag. He has a risk-taking appetite, as Dr. Devashish sir has said. He has already explained about taking risk, and we see that he is so successful in taking risk. But at the same time, Dr. Ramamurthy has also explained how to be very cautious. Like Rahul Dravid, your approach has to be consistent and a compassionate approach by Dr. Debashish Bhattacharya. And we also have young and dynamic Dr. Gaurav Luthra, Dr. Digvijay Singh, Dr. Vardhaman, and Dr. Saurabh, who has shared their tips. And I'm sure everybody must have learned lots, especially Anagha, you must have got your all queries clear from the experts and from the masters. So you have all the answers to your questions. And thank you once again for joining and taking out time from your such a busy schedule, all of you. Thank you once again. And for Thanksgiving, over to you, Dr. Anand.
So I'd like to take this. Yes,
Before Anaga gives Thanksgiving, we'll have to have one webinar where Anaga is the only panelist and talks to us for 1 hour.
And everyone else will ask
all these
questions to her.
Because I'm sure everybody can learn much more from what Anaga can teach us than all of us put together. So
yeah.
First of all, thank you so much to each one of our esteemed panelists for being here, taking out your precious time one day before Ganesh Chaturthi and at this time of the night. Thank you so much. It was truly a great learning experience, not just for me, definitely for all our viewers. And I think this will go into our history as one of the good, we fall back on this and listen to it again and again whenever we think of all scaling up and any part of growth. Thank you to each one of you. Thank you, Dr. Santosh, for always being so supportive and motivating us and guiding us towards increasing our webinars and adding more and more into it. Thank you, Dr. Arati, for moderating and associating YOSI along with MOS. We are towards the end of our tenure and next month would be our last. And we hope that through MOS, Dr. Santosh, me and the entire team of MOS have tried our level best to get not only scientific activities, but also such supportive webinars where our members and everybody else can really benefit from the experience of our seniors. I think not everybody has to learn the hard way. We can also learn by the experiences of others. And I think that's a much faster and a more smarter way of learning. Thank you all once again. And happy Ganesh Chaturthi. May Lord Ganesha bless everybody with lots of...
And scale up your practice.
Yes. We would like to wish everyone, all the viewers and the panelists, happy Ganesh Chaturthi in advance. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Santosh, Dr. Arti. Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you everyone. Thank you, MOS, for YOSI, for taking YOSI along.
Dr. Gaurav, Dr. Mahipal sir, Dr. Digvijay, Dr. Vardhaman, Dr. Nilesh.
Hi, Dr. Nilesh. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.